Good afternoon. Shall we start? Salim Hocam, shall we start or shall I wait? Okay, right, thank you. Well, good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to our conference again. Unfortunately, Dr. Mary Davis is not feeling very well at the moment. Hopefully, she's going to be fine tomorrow. And instead, kindly, Dr. Zeenath Reza Khan will deliver her speech today. Thank you very much for that. But before inviting her to the stage, I would like to give very brief information about her. I was actually working on your resume and actually abstract. So Dr. Zeenath Reza Khan holds the roles of founding president and board member at the NIE for Academic Integrity in the United Arab Emirates, and associate professor of Responsible Information Systems at the University of Wollongong in Dubai. Well, last December we had a great conference in Dubai. I should thank her once more for the hospitality again. Thank you very much. She has dedicated her research and practice to academic integrity. She received many awards as a leading figure in education and ethics. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Khan to the stage to give her plenary speech on personal responsibility for a culture of integrity in age of generative artificial intelligence. Would you please? Thank you.
Okay, a little bit unprepared, but here goes. I want to begin by, of course, thanking first Professor Dr. Salim Razi for this wonderful conference, to Çanakkale 18 Mart University's Center for Academic Integrity for putting it together, and to all the wonderful participants and attendees who are here today. I'm quite excited to do this talk where I'm going to be really focusing on personal moral responsibility. Something that I think we need to talk a lot more explicitly about. So I'm going to take you on a journey first, and then I'm going to kind of head back to the topic. This is year 1990. When I was about 10 years old, I moved from a British curriculum school that was run by British management. I had a very strong British accent, to a British curriculum school that was run by Indian management. So I was in 6th grade. You can imagine how cruel kids can be, because I was the one with the accent. Nobody else had an accent, although I looked like them. It was very difficult for me to really fit in, to the point where I would cry and go back home, and I wouldn't want to go back to school anymore. As the days progressed, because of course I'm enrolled, I don't have a choice, parents keep shooing me back into school, I realized I needed to pick up something to become the in crowd so that I could make friends. What I didn't realize at that time, of course, I was 11, was our section. So we have boys and girls separate. So our section, the girls section, was so notorious. The boys section would be punished. If they had to be punished, they would be sent to our class. And the duration of staying in the class was how bad their offense was in their class. So anywhere from staying in our class for 1 day to a week to maybe even a month. That was the maximum that a boy could take. That's how notorious this section was that I was in. I didn't know all this at the time, of course. But as I went on, I realized there was one thing that all students seemed to really revel in, really, really like. It was cheating. I thought, this is something I need to learn and pick up. I was in that school for 2 years. By the end of the school term, the second year, I was the go-to girl for cheating. We could be in a class this size. I could be sitting right here, and I could easily have managed to pass an answer to the person right at the end. I'm not kidding. So that was the skill that I inherited, and I learned, and I really honed as I went through those 2 years being in that class. And of course, the entire class was my friend. Everybody wanted to sit with Zeenath. Everybody wanted to be friends with Zeenath. When I had parties at home, everybody wanted an invite because they all wanted to be friends with Zeenath. Yay, I got what I wanted. But when I finished grade 7, my parents changed my school. again. This time, they sent me to a convent school, the only one that was there at the time in Dubai. I was like, okay, I'm once again new in a school where I don't know anyone. There are 27 other girls in the class, but I'm confident. I'm 12. I know the skill that's going to get me friends, right? Because it did it last time and it worked for me. So, first term exam came, and of course, I did. I helped everybody. Whoever wanted, whoever was like shushing and coughing, I turned and I made sure they got the answers. Everybody was happy, and they were like, wow, Zeenath, nice to know you. So I was like, great, I've done this again. I've managed to start making friends. At the end of the exam term, the principal, her name was Sister Fosca, she walked into class. Now, again, she had a name. Kids can be really cruel. She was called the Terminator. The reason being, she walked with a limp because she had polio when she was a child. But again, I knew this only when I was in grade 12. But when I was in grade 8, she was the Terminator. She walked in, she looked at each of us. She took a breath and she said, how many of you are Muslim? We picked up our hand. She was like, yes, I have worked in many Muslim countries, and honesty is one of your key pillars. Like, sure, we're 12-year-olds. Sure. And then she goes, I know you cheated. I know who cheated, and I know how you cheated. I'm going to give you 1 day to come up and admit that you cheated. I'm sitting there thinking, no way. I've done this for 2 years. I'm a pro at this, right? There's no way she knows. She's just saying that so people will, maybe admit it. But as she left, the other girls started crying. Like, really, they just started bursting up in tears. I'm like, why? Because they were afraid. They thought, okay, she knows we cheated. I'm like, guys, calm down. There was no calming them down that day. And I realized, oh my God, they're going to snitch on me. So I have to figure this out for myself so that I don't get into trouble. So I spent the day thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I was like, she did say, if you confess, nothing's going to happen. And it is a convent school, and she is a sister. So I could actually go and give a confession. Of course, we grew up watching Hollywood. So I thought I knew all there was to know about Catholic Church and confessions. So I walked up to her office the next day and I said, I have a confession. She was doing something on her desk and she didn't really even look up. She's like, okay. But I'm in my head, my 12-year-old head, I'm thinking, lady, I'm going to shatter your world today. And I told her, I said, I cheated. She didn't pause. She didn't even look up. After a while, she goes, okay, what do you want? I was like, you said there would be no punishment if we came forward and we admitted that we had cheated. Then she looked up, she put her pen down and she was like, okay, no punishment, no marks will be cut. And in my head, I'm going, yes, Zeenath's done it again. The pro has come through, right? But somewhere in the back of my mind, the subconscious was kind of blaring and warning I should have listened to, which I didn't. Now I know to listen to that instinct more. And I said, thank you. She's like, but I want you to do something for me in return. Like, she's not cutting marks, which means I'm safe. What's the worst she's going to ask me to do? Maybe just go up in front of my friends and say that I cheated. Okay, I'm ready for that. She goes, I'm going to give you 3 days to confess to your parents. I come from a very conservative family. My parents were both teachers. And of course, we're Muslim. So that value that she talked about is, of course, very big in our house. And I just looked at her and I was like, why? She's like, that's what I want you to do. I won't cut your marks. I'm not going to penalize you. No one in your class is going to know. But I want you to go home and tell your parents. I came out shaking. And it really, literally took me the entire 3 days to decide what was I going to do. Took me a lot of courage. I was still shaking. I got my parents to sit down. And I said, I have something to tell you guys. I cheated. My mom started crying. And my dad looked really dejected. I thought he was going to spank me, but he didn't. Instead, he turned and said, I know. I was like, what do you mean you know? He's like, we know, we knew you were cheating in the previous school. We just didn't know how to stop it. And that's why we decided to change your school. Okay, right. Everything that I knew about how cool I was and how I was winging it, and nobody knew anything about what I was doing, and I was so cool for my friends, was just going out the window. I said, okay. And then he said, we also spoke to your principal when you got your admission. What? She knows? They're like, yes. And she told us that she would handle this with you. So I'm guessing this is what she has done. So by the end of that conversation that I had with my parents, it lasted for like about 3 hours. There was a lot of epiphany in there from the 3 days and the 3 hours. There was a lot of reflection that happened to why I was cheating, because I didn't need to cheat, because I didn't need the marks, because I was good at studies anyway. I was doing well. So it wasn't that. It was, I needed friends. I wanted friends. How do I make friends? They love the cheating skill. So let me learn this and let me pick this up. So that seemed to be what drove me. Reflecting on the present, what was it that I was really looking to do? What was I going to get out of all this experience? And ultimately the future. The other thing that it really did for me was really made me think, even at 12, what was really important for me and who was really important for me. The next few weeks were a lot of counseling. From the era that I'm talking about, we didn't have school counselors in our schools, but I'm very blessed that I had the principal that I did. She got my parents involved. She got a couple of teachers involved. They did a lot of counseling with me, sitting with me, talking to me. By the time I graduated my 12th grade, I was so honest that during our board exams in grade 12, my teacher changed my seat. I was really worried. I went to her and I said, I don't cheat. I didn't cheat. She's like, we know. It's like, so why did you change my seat? She said, oh, because we were protecting you, because others were trying to cheat from you. So that was the reputation I left the school with. But in a way, I was in that bubble that, I don't cheat, so people must not be cheating, because I didn't hear friends asking me for answers anymore. Even when I was in university, through my bachelor's, master's. But there's one more thing that happened to me from going from grade 12 to going into my bachelor's and master's. I was supposed to actually go into medicine. For 12 years, I did all my subjects so that I could get into medicine degree. Ultimately, when I finished my 12th and I went back to Bangladesh for the degree, bless my cousin, he made me realize I was so not the person to go into medicine. I had a terrible, terrible condition of sympathy pain. Means if you get hurt, I will scream a lot louder than you will. And I can't stand blood. Like I would faint if I saw blood. How my parents and I missed that, I don't know. So I had to change my entire career. At the age of 18, my parents, my dad specifically, made me sign my first contract. He said, you are making the decision to change your career. This is something you need to take ownership of and responsibility for. So you will be accountable for the degree that you choose to do and what you make of yourself. So there were 3 points in that contract. I was responsible, I would succeed on my own steam, and I would have a doctor in front of my name. So these 3 were like the Rambo First Blood mission impossible thing that I kept in front of me throughout my bachelor's and my master's and most of my PhD. So when I started teaching, with all of these things that happened to me in the past, I was thinking, everybody must be like me. Everybody must have had some life-altering experiences, and we're in the same space. But when I was teaching, I was suddenly seeing students cheat. And from the back of my fuzzy mind, that all the skills that I had learned came back up, like, hey, I know you're cheating, and I know you're cheating, and I know you're cheating. Why are you cheating? And I would call up students and go, you're doing this, don't do it, because that's cheating. And this is a verbal warning. And they'd get really surprised, like, Ms. Z, how did you know? And I thought to myself, no, because I've done this when I was in grade 6 and 7. So I started to ask the question, why are students cheating? I knew why I had cheated when I was in grade 6 and 7. I wanted to make friends, right? But it didn't look like all the 300 students in my class were desperate to make friends. So what was the reason? And of course, because I was teaching computers and internet was the thing, as Sarah mentioned, that was the buzzword, or, oh, is this what's really spoiling the students and ruining their education? I thought, let me look at technology and see whether this is having something to do with students cheating. That went into becoming my whole PhD thesis, where I looked at 39 factors why students cheat. I thought this was it, done, it's finished. Now we know why they're cheating, so it must be so easy to stop them. And in a lot of ways, I was in a bubble, like what Professor Salim said, that you're in your space, you're going to kind of figure this out, and then you're going to help your students. Just progressively just got more difficult. Everybody blames the technology. Everybody says it's because something else has happened, and then there was contract cheating, so there are SMLs, and it's easy to do shopping online, and every student now has a credit card, they've got an iPad. So all of these things must be the reason why students are cheating more. But the focus always seems to be on the students. Who's cheating? How can we catch them? With 2023 happening the way it did, and ChatGPT exploding into all of our social media and into our phones, that kind of changed the conversation a little bit for me. And I'll tell you why. Because we started looking at what is it students are doing and why. So that why came back into the conversation again. But as we started working with students and universities last year, we started getting more calls and requests from the corporate world than from the academic world to come and help talk to their employees about AI ethics. That was really, really, really surprising to us, because we thought with the news headlines and all the conversations that were happening in and around artificial intelligence, that this is what was going to be in everybody's mind, and the universities and schools were going to be asking us to come and do workshops and trainings for them. But that was not happening. We had a lot more corporate people coming, companies coming and asking us. So we did a short study asking them, why were they so interested in AI ethics now? Because let's face it, artificial intelligence is not something new. I'm going to read out a quick passage, and I'll ask you a question after that. So here's the passage. It was 20 feet square, placed in the middle of the room. The superficies was composed of several bits of wood, about the bigness of a die, but some larger than others. They were all linked together by slender wires. These bits of wood were covered on every square with paper pasted on them. And on these papers were written all the words of their language in their several moods, tenses, dissonances, but without any order. So it seems to be describing something. I just want to know which decade do you think this write-up is from? It's some kind of technology that they're describing. Any guesses? Any guesses? Anyone? 1990s, 80s, 70s, 20s, 1920s. So we have a brave one who answered. Thank you. Okay. Sorry? No? No, it's not. Sorry? 50s? So what I just read out to you is the engine, which was the fictional machine described in Gulliver's Travel in 1726. So artificial intelligence as we know it, of course, exists in the last 50 years. But intelligence that is artificial is something we've been romancing with for a very long time. Thanks primarily, of course, to science fiction and to Hollywood. And this was something that kept coming back again in our conversations last year. When we were talking to people, they were either, we're not using AI because they thought they were not using ChatGPT, so they're not using AI, or, oh my God, AI is going to take my job, or it's going to be a killer robot that's going to be at my door. So it's either extremes that we were facing. But let me ask you this, besides Gen AI tools, ChatGPT, etc., how many of you are using AI on a daily basis? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I see a few hands that have gone up and few that haven't. Those who didn't pick up your hand, do you not use your phone to look up things and it automatically fills it up for you? That's machine learning. That's AI. Okay. Anytime if it's, it's giving you things that you want to see, or it's things you want to see, you're on Netflix or one of these streaming sites, and it says, we think you're going to like this. That's AI, right? Spam filters on emails is AI. So AI has actually been in our lives for a very long time. It's so ubiquitous and it's omnipresent. It's everywhere. We just don't realize it, right? So this was one thing that we were contending with last year again, that everybody thought this was something new, but it really wasn't. Then we started asking the question, what are the issues? Everybody was talking about the issues. And of course, there's a whole lot, right? And we know this. What happens if students are using generative AI? We know it's going to be a problem because they don't know the know-how. They don't have the content expertise. They won't know when the information is wrong. They won't be developing the skills that they need. All valid reasons. But let's take a step back from that and actually look at the concerns themselves. Cheating, not a new thing. It's been around, right? As Professor Sarah said, it's always been a thing. It's there and everybody's talking about it. And every time there is a wave, people are worried about it. When the internet came, everybody was up in arms about the internet impacting students. With the calculator, teachers revolted. They protested on roads against calculators, thinking this was it. This was going to be the death of students' arithmetic skills, right? But it wasn't. So cheating, not a new thing. Worries about ethics of the whole usage of the tools, because artificial intelligence has so much concern in and around it. We've talked about hallucination. Oh, students won't know that the content is wrong, and they don't. And it does hallucinate. Any kind of artificial intelligence is always going to hallucinate. What is hallucination? It's nothing but the fact that it's got a set of data that it's trained in, and if it has gaps, it very confidently fills that and still gives you an answer. But it's always been doing that. This is not something new either. It's biased. It's always been biased. I know the Turkish language is like the Bengali language where it doesn't have a gender. So if you can try this out right now, you go to Google Translate and you say, she's a doctor and he's a nurse. When you translate it from Turkish back, it'll say he's a doctor and she's a nurse. You write, she is brilliant and he is handsome. It'll translate right back and say he's brilliant and she's handsome. So we know this bias existed. Google facial recognition had a massive backlash in the early 2000s because it identified a Black person as a gorilla. These are issues we know that have existed, but we are concerned and talking about it now about our students. So the issues are not new. So let's talk about the ethical theories. What shapes our ethical behavior and understanding? Again, do we have any ethicists in the room? Anyone who teaches ethics? No? Okay. There are a lot of theories out there. You've got deontological theories that look at the will, your will to do good, your intentions. Then there is utilitarian theories that look at whether you want to, whether your consequences were good or bad. Each theory, of course, has its own set of problems, but there are theories out there that have been there for hundreds of years. People have been studying them and people have been teaching them. But let me ask you this question. How many of you teach ethics in your degree, unless it's actually an ethics or a law subject? Just a show of hands. Okay. Could you tell me what the subject or degree is? Sorry? Yeah? History. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah? English? Medicine? Business? That's it? Composition, so sort of English, under English? Computer science? Law, yes. Would that be engineering? Yes, so engineering, okay. So are we teaching ethical theories in these subjects, or are we just teaching ethical responsibility? Think about it. There's a difference. When you're teaching ethical theories, you're getting students to actually discuss the theories and how the decision-making happens. If you're just teaching ethical responsibility of a particular field, you're only looking at that field and ethical responsibility decision-making in that field. We are not explicitly teaching students ethical decision-making. And something I learned from Dr. Shiva, ethical decision-making isn't just about the decision, but the process that you take to make it. We need to be equipping students with that process. Nobody is doing that. K-12 schools, I think, are the most difficult, but they're in that system for 12 years before they come to university, where they're there for 4 years, 3 years, and each of us gets them for what, 4 months, 3 months at the max, right? We can't shape a complete change in their idea of what is right and wrong in 3 months. We can try, but we can't change that shape. But in the K-12 years that they're in, that's where they can, because there's a consistency in the schooling system, but it's not happening. Nobody is talking about ethical theories and responsibilities with school students. That's a problem. We have the theories, they've been there for a while, but we're not explicitly teaching them to our students. If you think about digital ethics, it's an extension of ethics. General ethics, like everyday ethics, as Professor Sarah said. Again, only if you are actually taking computer science or engineering, you will be taught digital ethics. But again, how many of you love taking selfies? Simple question. I know, I'm such a selfie person, right? But imagine, I'm taking a selfie because I'm interested in me in the surrounding. But when you take a selfie, how many people are actually taking in the background? Do you have their permission to take their photo and then post it on social media? That's digital ethics. So that's not just something we need to teach students who are taking computer science or engineering. That's something we all need to be aware of, not happening explicitly. So we've been looking at all of these things thinking, okay, it's a problem, it's existed, but why are we still talking about it without really knowing how to deal with it? And I kind of started reflecting on that first story that I started with, my journey. I was like, what changed me was a process of reflection, was this process where somebody was actively getting me to take ownership of my decisions and what those consequences were going to be if I chose to do X, Y, or Z. Personal, moral responsibility. So what is personal moral responsibility? It's nothing but basically taking accountability for the decisions that we are making. Now, it's so easy, everybody, we just teach students not to cheat, we teach students not to lie. As Professor Sarah said, there are different schools of thought. So, you've got schools of thought that say people are just bad unless they're good, or students they're good and they're just not being taught the skills. Whatever the thought might be and that you align with, the basic question is, are we really doing justice to students? Are we preparing them to be responsible, contributing members of society? Because that's each of our jobs as educators. That's what we are actually doing. Irrespective of the discipline or the field that we teach, that's the skills and knowledge they will take with them. But we are also developing them to be that person. And unfortunately, when it comes to personal moral responsibility, that doesn't seem to be something we're doing explicitly. We tell our kids, don't lie, of course, right? All of us. How many of us have called their bosses at least once in our lives, maybe in front of our child, to say, I'm sick and I can't come to work when we were not sick? You don't have to answer. But think about it, right? We've done this. So all I'm doing, though, is I might be telling my child, don't lie, but my actions are speaking way louder and telling them it's okay to lie when I need to. And that's really the message that they're going to be growing up with. So I love that Professor Sarah focused so much also on the professorial ethics, because we as teachers, when we have slides and we don't do citation, that's a message to our students. When we are constantly reusing our essays, assignments, projects that we're giving students, that's a message to students as well. I can repeat, but they can't repeat. Then it's self-plagiarism. And we hold them to it. Our policies will say it's self-plagiarism. You can't do it. You're going to get penalized for it. Right? So the personal moral responsibility isn't just something we can just get up and say, let's do it. It's a tick in the box and we are done with it. It does start with macro level policies, goes all the way down to micro, and then moves on to the practices and procedures that's happening in our classrooms with pedagogy and teaching and learning. That's why I was really hoping Mary's talk would happen before mine. I could link that back. So yes, we need a policy framework to shape what we are going to be doing with our students, how we expect them to behave, how we behave with them. Then we need teaching and learning curricula, pedagogy, so that they're rightly supporting what we want them to know about our policies and procedures. What are the values that we appreciate and we want to uphold? And in all of this, we need to ensure we have students as champions. The fact that my principal and my parents included me and the way they used my experience to teach me changed my life. It wasn't just, okay, they stopped Zeenath from teaching. It was so much that they have intrinsically changed Zeenath to be who she is in the future. Because I internalized those values and I moved on in life with that. And that's what we need to do for our students. We need to figure out how we are going to help them internalize these values and lessons that we are talking about today. And we've all been talking about it, irrespective of whether it's a faith project outputs or it's the keynote speeches or the amazing, presentations that will be happening tomorrow. We're all talking about how can we ensure we support students to be successful. But success isn't just with the skills and knowledge they're taking away with them. It's with how they start making those right decisions, even when no one's looking. So the things that we have done and we have seen that really works when it comes to personal moral responsibility is definitely looking at proactively working with students constantly to have these conversations in safe spaces. So I'm just going to touch back on something that Professor Sarah said about restorative practice. One of the first things that we did when we reviewed the policy at our university was set up a triage clinic. When we did it, of course, there was a lot of pushback. It was like, why do you need a triage clinic for academic misconduct? Like, the students are guilty. That's why they've got a case. Sure. But as Professor Sarah said, we want them to have the ability to come back when there is an issue. Not saying you're out, that's it. We don't want to see you anymore. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We want them to come back and work with us so that they don't repeat it, so that they are able to make better decisions the next time around. The next thing we did was develop a student champion model, where we basically invite students to become part of the system. They actually get voted, so they have to opt to want this, so it's not a compulsory thing. We don't force them. It's a student-driven thing. They get training. They become the champions who are talking to other students about academic integrity, about generative AI, talking to students about ChatGPT or any other tool that we might be using in class. They will come back and talk to us about, so, Dr. Z, there's an issue. Students are really talking about this XYZ, and we want to know what's the best kind of way we can answer them. So we will have that discussion. And then they will go back and they will talk to student groups about it. What this has done on campus is really change the way students even want to talk about academic misconduct or generative AI. Students are openly talking. They're openly looking at, trying out, looking at, seeing what they can use, what they cannot use. If they're confused, they know, even if they don't want to approach us, they can approach the student ambassadors. So having students as co-creators and partners in this journey has really helped see how students are changing the way they look at academic misconduct. They're not looking at us, oh my God, this person's cheated, let's not be around them. They're not doing that anymore. Like, okay, I cheated, I think I'm cool. They're not doing that anymore either. They're having a very healthy conversation about, okay, so somebody cheated, let's see how we can support this person. What was it that student needed more? Maybe they needed more training in a particular topic. Maybe the instruction from the teacher was not very clear. Because we know there's a lot of reasons why students might cheat. And as Professor Guy's Curtis's study and his colleagues' study has shown, only 2% of students actually cheat maliciously. So all students are not out to cheat. They're not intending to do it because they're bad. They might be cheating because of circumstances, exactly as Professor Sarah said. So the question then becomes, how do we help them? And this is what we have been doing through the campus and through the center that we have, and it's working. So with that, I want to actually open up the floor for questions. I would like to end by saying, we want everyone to work together to develop personal moral responsibility, because it's each of our duty to do that. And we need to make this discussion more explicit, because implicit values will not necessarily go very far if they've not been intrinsically accepted by students. If they're explicit, there's more chances of them becoming intrinsic values for these students. And if it is intrinsic, then that is what has the long-term impact on students and their decision-making. So while we are really worried about generative AI and how that's impacting our students, we also know that these are not new concerns. These concerns exist, and we know if we are able to get students to make those decisions correctly, they will know when to choose ChatGPT or not. I'm using, again, ChatGPT as just an example, but any of the generative AI tools. With that, I'm done with my talk, and I open up the floor for questions. Right? Yes.
Yeah, that's such a role model. You have a very nice relationship with a lot of students. Can you tell us, is it a secret or how you are doing it? That you have a lot of students around you who are interested in academic integrity and really doing the research and promoting it, because I think some countries are really struggling with, getting the students involved. How you are doing it?
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica, for the question. So we actually have built an entire student champion model around the experiences that we've had. So we start off by first getting students involved as volunteers. And we have a system in the university where if they volunteer, they get some points. And that points adds to their graduation towards credits for a particular subject at the end of their graduate, all the entire subjects that they've finished. So students love to do volunteering on campus for any events because they know they're going to go get those points. Once they start volunteering and we see students showing real interest and a little bit of passion towards the topic, then we start inviting them to attend some training courses with us and to have some discussions with us. When they do that, then they go, okay, we're really interested. How can we get more involved? So we introduce them to the center, which has like a student board and an active committee for students. And then they meet other students, which is basically their community of practice. And they feel supported. They feel like they're not the odd ones out among their friends who showed interest in academic integrity, because they've got now other students from other universities and campuses who are also there and supporting them. Once that happens and they've gone through a couple of months of doing activities and events with other students, they get really excited. They come back to our campus and they go, okay, what's next for me? So the next for them is then participating in the election to become a student champion on campus. Beyond the campus champion program, we also offer even undergraduate students opportunities to join us as research assistants. And this is something we've really seen be a big pool for students, particularly undergraduate students, because postgraduates and PhDs, they have an element of research in their studies and they're supposed to be doing it. But with undergraduate students, a lot of the time it's not even expected. 2018, I had first come to Turkey and I had joined the NI conference. I had come with 2 undergraduate students. And at that time, I still remember how shocked other delegates were that they were not PhD students, but undergraduate students who had done the research with me. They had developed focus group interviews, they'd gone through the training, they had conducted the focus groups, written the paper, and that they were coming here now to present it. Now, even if they don't take that degree forward to look at education or academic integrity, in the corporate world, these students have come back and told us what a huge hit it is to put in that they are a published author. Because in the corporate world, they're not expecting this at all. So again, we get these champions to come back and talk to other students about the impact, academic and non-academic. And that inspires them more. And as you may have noticed, I've come this year with another student. She's also an undergraduate student. She's the sister of the student who had come in 2018. So now they've got a legacy going. And so this is also something that happens a lot. We see like, brothers and sisters are pulling each other in. And they're like, this is something good, get into this. So a lot of it has to do with the rapport that we are building with students and making it a very safe space for students to feel it's okay to come and talk to us, and they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be jeered, they're not going to be, other students are not going to be cruel towards them, which is something very, very important. In 2016, when we first started, we used to get a lot of this feedback that, oh, miss, somebody's made fun of me because I'm interested in academic integrity, and, they're like, it's not cool. But as we progressed with the events that we do, the kind of, the awareness campaigns that happen, and when they see these students becoming leaders, that kind of has changed that narrative on campus. Now students don't think if you've just put up your hand for something to do with academic integrity, that it's uncool. They think it's, oh, okay, well, that's another thing that I could also do besides the dance club and the drama club and, the art club and the math club. That's an academic integrity club I could be a part of. Because, there's opportunities for me. What they don't realize, or maybe they do, is in the process, they're also learning about academic integrity. They're really internalizing the values that we're constantly talking about. So that's a conversation that we're having with them. Hope that answers. Here, there. Here first, then there.
It's a supplementary question about your champions. Do you pay them?
So in the UAE, we don't have a payment model for students. What we do, for instance, with research students, once they've moved from the champion to becoming research assistants, if we've got research grants, we can pay them as research assistants. So that's where that moves on. But the champion model, like any other student club, has no payment involved. We cannot pay students for work they do on campus. But I think at the back, Martin.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I have a similar story. So, and it was also in the conference. So,
like Professor Sarah said, we're the normal curve.
we're yeah. So, United Nations with the project Jeunesse Youth to 2030 really indicate that we have all governance or stakeholder, all decisions are made at the political level. For example, in an institution or in politics, it needs to involve the voice of the young people. And so I'm just starting to hear, I talk a lot in my work about student agency and voice of the student. We talked, Dr. Eden this morning talked about it also, involving more the student in the process. And my belief is that if we do listen to them, and that's what he said this afternoon, hearing their stories also, but getting them involved in the decision and the development of policy, we will see more, first of all, empower the student, and they will become, okay, better decision maker, and also maybe lesser cheating, or at least, you know, they will be willing to share the story also. So again, do you agree with the statement that we need to involve more the voice of the young people in the process of developing policy? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that question. Absolutely, it's a resounding yes. And again, I'll just go back and give you the example from my campus, because we are an Australian campus. 2015 was a big mark for all Australian universities because of the contract cheating, my master scandal that happened. If you're not aware of it, it was basically a number of universities who found out that their students had bought assignments, essays, and even PhD dissertations from a particular company called My Master. It was a big deal. Everybody was up in arms about it. And of course, because we are an Australian campus, we also got dragged into the conversations. And there was a real push from Professor Tracy Briteg at the time, because she was working with TEXA on the review of policies and making changes in the policies. So when we said we were going to do the review of the policies, one of the first things that we did was set up a subcommittee with students in that committee who looked at the review. They were part of the review process through from start to finish. So every wording that we used, every steps that were being put in, they were really tearing them apart. And as Professor Sarah said, a lot of the times they're so legally turned that they're very scary for students. And students were like, okay, we understand that legally you need to send this, but you need to do something before this to warn a student that this email is going to hit their mailbox. So again, that helped us shape that procedure so that we would call the student in first as a preliminary meeting to just talk to them about what was happening, why was there going to be some kind of an investigation, and that you were going to get an email. And that has really helped, because prior to this, the process was that let's say I think there's a cheating happening in my assignment, I have to go on the system and I put the details, and zoom, there's a crazy long, very technical legal email that goes to the students saying, hey, this is what you've done, and it's, this is not something we take very lightly, and you're going to have to come for a meeting, and you can bring in somebody for support. And students would show up with their parents. In a lot of the Asian cultures, parents have a very big voice, and they're paying the fees, and they're screaming at the poor teacher because they don't even understand what's happened, why their student got that email. So with the policy change, that, for instance, was a very big change we brought into the process itself. And that was because of the students' voices. They said, you need to change that, because this really scares students when they get that email without any previous information. So that policy change happened. It got done by 2018. And we've only revised it a couple of times because of COVID and because of the Gen AI thing. But otherwise, the policy is still intact. And we had another round of student meetings last year. They were okay with the policy. And I'm guessing it's not the same group of students, of course, but they were okay because it was students who had okayed that policy before. So that automatically makes it more sustainable, the policy itself. As Professor Sarah said, we can't keep changing policies. So they need to be as sustainable as possible. Hope that answered your question.